Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. I'd like to welcome everyone this afternoon and also wish everyone who celebrates a happy, joyous, and friendly and warm Thanksgiving. I know some of our friends across the pond don't celebrate Thanksgiving. It's sort of an American holiday, but for all you Americans, have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and we're thinking about you and thinking about you being with your friends, family, and loved ones. And it's always a warm holiday. It's one of my favorite eating holidays. I'll put it that way. You know, we all gain a few pounds over Thanksgiving. Anyway, this case of Anna Kepner, it's still, it's not like it's a huge mystery. I think the FBI knows fully what occurred here. And the only thing that is perhaps not even a mystery, but confounding to us and to the public is, why has there not been an arrest yet they're calling this case, they officially called it a homicide yesterday, right? So this young girl, she didn't die accidentally. They're calling this a homicide. And in vernacular, in law enforcement vernacular, homicide simply means death caused by another. And it can be, most of the time, of course, it is criminal, but it also can be non-criminal. And I give you an example of that. When the police use restraint on someone and they use too much pressure, say, on the person's back, and the person's not able to expand their chest and breathe, that's something called restraint asphyxia. And people can die that way. And most of the time, it's accidental and it's not ruled a homicide. But it could still be ruled a homicide, but yet not be criminal. But I think there's no doubt that this checks both boxes. It is a homicide and it is criminal. And we are all awaiting the FBI to make the arrest of the 16-year-old, still unnamed. Everyone knows his name, but he's officially unnamed suspect in this case, perpetrator in this case, only known as the 16-year-old stepbrother with the initials TH. So that's how they're carrying it right now. And this case, of course, becomes more interesting to everyone following because of the fact that it occurred on a cruise line, right? The Carnival Cruise Line. And think of all the thousands of people every year, every day that are on cruise ships. And are cruise ships safe? And I think for the most part, the answer is yes. It's usually, I've never been on a cruise. I have no desire to go on a cruise. I don't like to be in places that I have no control over. And to me, that's one of them. You're stuck out at sea, and if anything happens, there's nothing you can do about it. So that's one of my phobias and one of my reasons I don't go on a cruise. But there's in excess of 3,000 people on this cruise. And think of how the Carnival Cruise Line has to prepare and control and secure 3,000 people, feed, make sure those 3,000 people don't overindulge in alcohol, which I think is a huge problem on most cruise ships. Securing thousands of cameras, thousands of smart cards that track the entrance and the exit of people between the cameras and the smart cards of entering certain locations. So the security is a huge thing. Yet something like this occurred. And then because something like this occurred, we must look towards the family, towards the parents, because there were lots of mistakes done here. There was lots of inexplicable conduct by the adults here, at least to me. From my point of view, my perspective, you don't allow a 16-year-old boy to stay in the same room as an 18-year-old girl who really is not his sister. And in fact, the 16-year-old is infatuated with the 18-year-old to the level of potentially creating everything that occurred here. So folks, hold on to your hats, hold on to your loved ones, hold on to your service dog, Hold on to your opinions. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone, the police off-the-cuff zone. There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
Joining me today, and I'm glad I have a co-host today because I've been running solo for the last few days, and it's a lot more work when you're running solo. Joining me today is retired NYPD Sergeant, professor at Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut, attorney. Welcome to the show, Professor Mike Geary. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, Bill. Thank you for having me on. Good afternoon. Good to see you.
Mike, it's very good to see you because I needed a lawyer to run some things by in this case. One of the things, of course, that jumps out at us, and I'll do a little recap of where we're at right now, but what jumps at us right away is the fact that the 16-year-old, they're calling him the stepbrother, is a juvenile. And to understand juvenile law, it's a little more complicated than charging someone as an adult. And what exacerbates this is the fact that it's also international law and maritime law, because this happened out at sea. And that's why the FBI is the agency that's going and is investigating this case. Mike, can you enlighten us a little bit about the ramifications of a juvenile charged with a crime and who has yet to be charged, but will probably be charged out at sea, international law, and the ramifications of the FBI investigating this instead of, say, the nearest U.S. police department?
All right. Yeah. You could, if you're a juvenile and you could be for like, you get like a runaway, a kid who's skipping school, they're only status offenders because they don't hurt anybody but themselves. They always go to family court. Then you have juvenile delinquents, and juvenile delinquents are people who are between the ages of like 7 and 16. They're considered minors under the law, and they commit crimes which actually are against the law. Then nobody could do these things like a robbery or a burglary, things like that. Then you have what's called juvenile offenders, and juvenile offenders are juveniles at least 12, but under 16, who are children biologically. They're in their minority, but they've committed such heinous crimes like rape, robbery with a firearm, burglary with a firearm, homicide, things like that, those sorts of horrific sort of crimes. They are considered, even though they're juveniles, they're considered to have graduated into adulthood solely because of the seriousness of the crime. Those kind of kids will first appear in family court, and then the family court judge will decide, and the prosecutor will decide what is going to happen to the juvenile. Keep that juvenile in family court or waive jurisdiction and put that kid and move that child's case up into a regular adult criminal court. And I think I can see that happening here. And it's probably going to be a Florida state criminal court where this trial takes place.
Mike, can the FBI really toss it to the state?
I under Florida law, they have a section of Florida law, Florida statutes 910-006. It's jurisdiction of the state outside of the state's usual territorial limits, and so therefore the state under Florida law, the state has an interest in the safety of all people who are Floridians who are leaving on cruise ships or returning on cruise ships, to a Miami port, to a Florida port. Also, so therefore it gives them jurisdiction. In this case, I don't think there's going to be a fight over jurisdiction. I don't think a federal U.S. attorney is going to want to prosecute this case. I think what's going to happen is the FBI will turn over all of their documentation, and they'll probably turn over to the district attorney's office in the county from which that cruise ship left, and then returned. And then I believe that district attorney there will try this case. Most likely it'll end up in an adult regular criminal court. But I'm not sure if all states have this, but because of the cruise line, industry in Florida, Florida has given itself extra jurisdictional power in this case.
Okay, I want to get us up to date, and thank you for that explanation there. Weeks after Anna's death, new information began to leak out that turned the case upside down. On November 24th, ABC News reported that it had obtained a copy of Anna's death certificate from her family. It reportedly ruled her death a homicide and listed the cause as mechanical asphyxia or suffocation. In a chilling detail, the document allegedly specified that she was mechanically asphyxiated by other persons. While the Miami-Dade Medical Examiner's Office has not officially released the cause of death or commented on the case, this report painted a grim picture. This wasn't an accident. Sources close to the investigation provided even more disturbing details to the media, reporting that Anna may have died from a bar hold, a dangerous chokehold where an arm is forced across the neck. Investigators also reported that there were 2 bruises on her neck and physical evidence of a struggle. Just as unsettling was what preliminary reports suggested wasn't found. There were reportedly no initial signs of SA, nor were traces of drugs or alcohol found in her system. So what was the motive? Who did this and why? The answer, it turned out, was hiding in the public record, buried in a stack of family court documents. I would really just like to comment about this because there was no evidence forensically of SA, that doesn't mean there was not an attempt at that. And that Anna fought to prevent this, fought for her life in essence. And that's why she lost her life. So don't let it fool you when they say there were no signs. Well, what do you mean there were no signs? Who was in there with her? One other person, right? What was the motive? And again, we tell you all the time that motive is not a necessary element to prove the crime of murder. It is something that the jury likes to hear and understand what was the motive, but it's not a necessary element to prove that crime. So all of these things, and the fact that, and I spoke to Mike about this before the show, there was evidence of premeditation, or at least trying to hide what the person who did this did. So hiding his fact that he attempted to SA perhaps and resulted in an armbar that caused her death. Now, all of those things we can look at the crime scene and see if it matches up in regards to what we're talking about. Now, she went into her room on 11/6 late, perhaps before midnight, and then wasn't found till 11:17 a.m. on the 7th. She could have been deceased for many, many hours. So then how forensically do we determine that? Well, body temperature, rigor mortis, right? Algor mortis. The science comes in, tries to determine in conjunction with digital evidence, cell phone evidence, text messages, last time she was seen alive, last time the stepbrother was seen before going into that room. So all of these are investigative steps that the FBI must take, and all of them will help to prove this case when the trigger is finally pulled. And I believe, based on all the information we're getting and not confirmed information from the FBI, that the stepbrother could be arrested very soon. Mike.
Yeah, Bill, when you look at this case, it's clearly a homicide. Okay, one human acted upon another to terminate their life. The question regarding SA, you're going to look at the condition of the decedent's body. You're going to look to see whether they were clothed, what there were signs of violence inflicted upon them, any other than their neck. You're going to look at that, the clothing of the perpetrator, if you could get that. But I just want to remind people that we talked about the Koberger case numerous times. and the prosecutor said there was no sign of an essay, or there was
Yes.
no sort of following and stalking. Yet we know that those sort of actions occurred. So it'll be up to the prosecutor to determine whether or not they have enough evidence of SA to present to the jury, potentially present to a jury, or they'll just go with the homicide case and leave the SA question unanswered. But the SA question will determine, probably, as you say, the motive, the why, the who, what, where, when, and how. We know that already. We just don't know why. And the why would really help jurors understand the surrounding circumstances of this inexplicable, what would seem seemingly inexplicable kind of criminal act. But we should know that, and it'll be up to the prosecutor to determine whether or not they're going to go with the essay. But in this case, it is that's the one thing that is missing, and I think that's the one thing that really gives people a really good idea of why this thing happened. But right now, it's a solid case of homicide against one person. We have a lot of we have video, you have electronic information from the card key, you have the cameras in the hallways, and we know pretty much the timeline of everything. And finding the body underneath a bed covered in some sort of life preservers or something, to me, that's consciousness of guilt. Somebody hid that body there so that their crime wouldn't be found. That's consciousness of guilt.
There's some people in the chat asking clearly, what is SA? YouTube doesn't like us to use the word, the S word. So the A is the abuse. All right. So you could figure that out. YouTube does not like that word. Sometimes they'll demonetize you if you use it. So we choose not to use it. But Mike, one of the things that I've learned also in my career as a investigator is that looking at someone's past can be a pretty good indicator of what they're going to do in the future.
Yes.
So that's one of the reasons police always look at the person's criminal history. And in this case, there may not be a criminal history, but there may be some other flags, red flags there, like a psychiatric history. Did he have a history of alcohol and drug abuse? I think some of those things are coming to the forefront now. Mm-hmm. What was his educational background? How was he in school? Again, we're hearing from the former boyfriend of Anna Kepner that the stepbrother, the 16-year-old stepbrother with the initials TH, was infatuated with her. Really smart to put a 16-year-old who's infatuated with an 18-year-old who's not related to her, to put her in the same room on a cruise ship. To me, that in itself is absolutely criminal. And if this case does go to trial and it's determined that there's some negligence on part of the family, I think that could be part of it. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. If you want to contribute financially, we have a Patreon with 4 different levels. We also have a YouTube channel membership with 5 different levels, and you want to join the Police Off the Cuff family, that's one way to do it. So if you want to help our algorithm, hit the like button, give us a thumbs up, make lots of comments, share us with your friends and your family, and that will help our show grow.
Have you or a loved one been injured in an accident with a commercial vehicle, like an 18-wheeler, delivery van, bus, or rideshare, and you weren't at fault? These cases aren't like regular car accidents. They involve corporations, insurance companies, and complex transportation laws. You need an experienced attorney who knows how to fight and win. That's where the team at 911 Law Call comes in. We connect you with top law firms that specialize in commercial vehicle accidents and have a proven track record of securing real compensation for victims just like you. The consultation is free. There are no fees unless we win. Call 866-814-2911 now. That's 866-814-2911. 866-814-2911. Justice for commercial vehicle victims starts here. 866-814-2911. No fees unless we win. That's 866-814-2911.
Michelle Harper in the chat, Michelle Harper 8822, red flags like Grandma saying he had some demons he was dealing with. I'd like to know what dealing with means. Well, I think Michelle she's referring to the fact he was probably getting some psychiatric assistance. Perhaps he could have been on some kind of depression drug. Those are all demons. And these will find out. Look, we didn't know up until very recently, that was ruled a homicide, of course. We're finding that out, not through the FBI, but through some legal documents from a family court case. We're also finding out more about the family dynamic. And in regards to, I had no idea till yesterday that the grandmother and grandfather of the paternal side of this family was also on the cruise with them. And as well as when they talk about the blended family that was together. So there was quite a lot of people here. There's the blended family. And we didn't know till yesterday that the grandmother and grandfather were in fact there. And they had some contact with Anna Kepner too, who was their biological granddaughter. So quite confusing. This is from Court TV.
Information coming from that stepbrother's biological father and his attorneys. You just saw, because they're in a nasty battle over custody, and that's separate and apart from this criminal investigation the FBI is involved with. Lieutenant Gould, I'm sure your ears perked up, as did mine, when he's talking about the 16-year-old being permitted to drink by the parents and also staying in the same room as this beautiful young 18-year-old. Your thoughts?
Yeah. So historically, cruise ships, number one, the homicide rates, intentional murder rates are relatively low because of all the factors we talked about earlier, all the security factors. Suicides and overdoses are relatively common. So you have a 16-year-old who, and again, if you've been on a cruise ship, once you get into international waters, it's free flowing. The parents are partying, everybody's partying, the kids have access to alcohol. So I think when toxicology reports come, like most murders, whether it's manslaughter or intentional murder, there's always going to be alcohol involved in this for sure. 16-year-olds, by the way, anybody who knows a 16-year-old, they all think they're smarter than everybody else in the universe. So they're pretty easy when the interview comes, providing they're not represented by counsel, which I assume they will be. They won't outsmart investigators, and they may even try to outsmart their own attorney, but it's not going to happen. So as sophisticated as they think they are, they're really not. So again, this is going to come to an end relatively quickly. Matthew hit it on the head. There's going to be culpability to go around for everyone, including the cruise line at some point.
Yes, great analysis, Lieutenant. Matt Timpanik, another legal question for you, please. Do you think stepmom is going to be successful in her petition for the gag order so that everything can't be talked about on shows like this one?
I definitely think in the state of Florida, what we have in family law cases is they are usually sealed from the public, like people's divorces, custody battles, because there are children, minor children involved when doing so. So I ultimately think she is going to be successful, but she's only going to be able to keep the cat in the bag for so long before everybody knows the facts when, if and when her son is actually charged with what I think will be murder.
So, Mike, that's really interesting because the other thing I found out yesterday, and again, we didn't know this either, was that apparently the 16-year-old stepson, who he's been referred to with the initials TH, was interviewed by the FBI. And I don't know if this is accurate or not because that grandmother, the biological grandmother of Anna, she said a lot of inconsistent things in her statement. And she said that she saw Anna twice. And it was clear from other people that were interviewed that she went to her room and didn't come back out. According to grandmother, she went to her room, changed into a different outfit, and was at the gambling casino with her. There's no evidence of that. So I don't know whether to believe the fact when the grandmother said she was present when TH was interviewed by the FBI and he told them nothing. It was a basket case, blah, 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 blah. But when we referred to Miranda law being read, if they were going to interview him, they would have to get a Miranda waiver from TH, the 16-year-old step brother, and parent or a legal guardian. And the grandmother would not be a parent or a legal guardian because she's not his grandmother. So it would have to be his mother. So who waived Miranda on his behalf? And did he make any statements, Mike?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because, as you said, if you got that minor, and you need a parent or guardian, someone there to act on their behalf. As you're talking about this, I'm thinking perhaps if they interviewed him and a whole bunch of other people just as witnesses and not as a suspect, then it may be okay. And whatever they got from him would survive any sort of motion to suppress later on. But I'm hoping that's the case, because if that's the case, that's okay. But you don't know. We don't know. We don't know the steps that the FBI took and the chronology of it. But you're right. That opens up a can of worms if she isn't really acting as a guardian, or she put herself there as the guardian, or she just doesn't know. She may have made a lot of inconsistent statements. If she said she saw Anna twice, is she referring to an earlier time frame in the afternoon or early evening, and then everybody else is saying they saw her once, and then maybe she saw Anna that second time and thinking, okay, that's twice, but nobody saw her earlier. The chronology is really important, as you know, in this kind of case, because it places everybody, their movements in context with everybody else, and you could check that from video and from cameras and from the key when you slide the key in the lock.
Yeah, the smart card.
Yeah, it's but yeah, you're right. That is an interesting Miranda issue, and I'm hoping that he was interviewed only as a witness, and many other people were being interviewed at the same time, and that at that point he was not a suspect. I'm keeping my fingers crossed about that.
You know, from the chat at Michelle Harper 8822, Bill and Mike, the grandma said he was freaking out and saying he didn't know what happened. Michelle, I heard that same interview too, and thank you for that. But yes, I don't trust anything the grandmother said, because she came up with some real glaring discrepancies. So I'm not really trusting her as a competent and a believable witness at this point. When we were talking about Miranda, and I haven't heard anyone else talking about this, we're the only ones, the NYPD. So we're the only ones talking. But what Mike said is very true. They could go in to speak to him as a witness. But the problem with that is they know fully in their mind, they don't go into an interview with a suspect without prior knowledge of several things. Did they see him on the video going into the room? Was he the last one seen to go into that room with Anna? So right there, if they want to say in court, oh, we didn't think he was... Did you view the video prior to interviewing him? Yes, we did. It's not believable. It's not going to pass the smell test, as they say. But say it did pass the smell test. The other thing the FBI would have to do is ask him some questions. And if that threshold goes from witness to suspect, and they now have probable cause to arrest him, they must, at that very point, read him Miranda. And because he's a juvenile, he must waive along with his parent or legal guardian. So very complicated legal issue here. So the FBI could go in there under the guise of, oh, well, he was just a witness. No, he was not. You viewed the video first, and you even had the computer printout from the smart card. So you knew he was one of the last person that went in to that room with Anna, the last person to see her alive. So that's very complex, Mike.
Yeah, that's why chronology is so important. You mention it all the time. When I talk to my students, this is what I mentioned. Chronology is so important because it shows when things were done, and it makes sense when things are done in a chronology. If you understand the chronology, you understand what happened. If you don't know the chronology, then things are just happenstance all over the place. But to understand something, the chronology is important. And like you said, this is going to be a matter of fact. When did the FBI first get information? When did they come aboard? When did they get the video? When did they get the key information? When did they start interviewing people? At what time? Because that, as they go along, they're developing their case. Their suspicions against some people may be lower or may increase against other people. And then after that, like you say, then did they start their interviewing of him. All is going to be his attorney when this comes to trial, wherever it is, adult court or juvenile court. His attorney is going to have a field day with this.
Absolutely. This is from Fox 35 in Orlando.
The term murder used to describe the death of a teenager from Titusville on board a Carnival cruise ship.
It has been 2 weeks now since the death of 18-year-old Anna Kepner. Her 16-year-old stepbrother still remains a suspect. Fox 35's Esther Bowers spent the weekend digging through some civil court documents, and Esther's joining us right now with what she has learned. Hi, Esther.
Amy, so what we are seeing right now is Anna's stepmother wants a gag order put in place on this unrelated family court case. What that means is she wants to ban the press and the public from getting access on documents and also being able to attend some upcoming court hearings. A Brevard County judge will have the final say on whether or not that happens. From a suspect in a cruise ship death to a suspect in a murder.
You're talking a 16-year-old.
These new court documents say Anna Kepner's 16-year-old stepbrother is currently the subject of an active FBI criminal investigation involving the suspected murder of his mother's stepdaughter.
If this truly was a homicide, if it was, and I'll take it a step further, was a murder, they need to get that person who committed that crime locked up because they are a danger to the community.
No one has been arrested for Anna's death yet, but in these documents, her stepmom is asking a judge to seal a child custody case involving her biological children to stop any more information from going out.
You cannot use family law court as a tool to hinder a criminal investigation. And the judge is going to be very cautious as to what restrictions she actually places on this.
Jose Rivas is a criminal defense lawyer not affiliated with the case. He doesn't think a gag order is necessary and shouldn't be granted. If the family wants to stop information from being released, he says they should pause the custody battle.
Or you could postpone, it's mute, let it sit until the criminal investigation is resolved.
Anna's cause of death still has not been released. No charges have been filed against the stepbrother.
Well, we know it has been released. The cause of death was asphyxia through an armbar choke. There were signs of strangulation, which included bruising to the neck as well as petechial hemorrhaging to the eye. So this was a little older. We know now that this is in fact a homicide caused by compression to the neck.
And Rivas says the FBI won't do anything unless they have a case they can prove.
And the FBI has a very high conviction rate in federal court. You know, it's like up in the 90s. If they can't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, most likely they're not going to move forward.
And the judge here in Brevard has not ruled whether or not they will seal the case and ban the media from attending the upcoming court hearings. The next hearing date is set for December 5th. Reporting live in Vieira, Esther Bauer, Fox 35 News.
You know what, Mike, one of the things, I'll get that off the screen. One of the things is that I think this is a very slippery slope because I think there's culpability on both the mother, well, she would be the stepmother, and the biological father of Anna. I think they're culpable, at least from a family court perspective, of not giving proper supervision to a juvenile. And if the 16-year-old, the stepbrother, TH initials, if he was drinking unsupervised and that exacerbated this whole situation, I think they have a big problem.
Billy, they do. They absolutely do. And the earlier you had a commentator on and he said, oh, everybody drinks on the cruises. The parents are drinking. You can drink all you want. It does not relieve you of your legal responsibilities. Now, they may not get charged. The parents may not get charged criminally with, you know, endangering the welfare of a child neglect, whatever they want to call it in Florida. But that doesn't mean the evidence of some possible neglect, even if it's uncharged, cannot be used as by the other parent in that prior divorce and that prior child custody case. Because remember, both the biological father and Anna's mom have had their issues, and the stepmom and her husband, who's the biological father of TM, right? TM is his initial, right?
No,
yeah, TH.
TH.
I'm sorry, TH. they've both had issues, but that could be used against them in any sort of future family court issue, resolution of any family court issues, like, visitation and supervision of the children. But yeah, even if they're not charged, that negligence may hang over their head and affect their civil separation agreements, alimony and child support and all that other stuff that's going to happen.
Mike, there's been a little bit of a conversation going on in the chat relative to, isn't where they get charged, isn't that have to be where the ship was registered? I don't know international law or maritime law enough to comment on that. I don't know if you do, but I don't think that's the truth here.
I mean, a lot of ships are registered in Panama because the fees are less and the regulations are a lot less. They may be flagged in the Virgin Islands and the Bahamas. But in this case, I do know that Florida does have a law that they want to exercise jurisdiction outside their normal territorial jurisdictional limits. And under Florida law enacted about 3 years ago, 910-006, if there is violence on board a cruise ship that leaves from Florida and disembarks from Florida, then Florida itself may decide, the state of Florida may decide to exercise jurisdiction. They don't have to, but they can if they want to. Now, probably Panama or the Virgin Islands, wherever this ship is flagged, if it's flagged outside the United States, would have to contest that jurisdiction. I think they probably just have international registration to avoid costly federal regulations and things like that. So most likely I'm looking at, because everybody here is a Floridian, it embarked from a Florida port, it returned to a Florida port, and we have this Florida law. I think the trial will be a criminal trial. It will start out in juvenile court. I think it will end up in adult court in a Florida county court, similar to every other criminal case. That's what I'm thinking at this point.
Okay. Well, that's our answer from here. I'm glad we have a lawyer on board, because I certainly couldn't
trying.
know that one. From the chat, Eyes on Heaven 4765. My brother used to wrestle with me, do judo, but not at 18. Stopped when I was young. I do not think many 18-year-old females wrestle with others. Eyes on Heaven, the reason I read your comment, and thank you for your comment, is that could be a defense, saying, oh, we were wrestling and I accidentally put her in an arm bar and I didn't realize that, because she was moving and fighting, I didn't realize how much pressure could that be a defense? The only one that can really tell the story is TH about what happened. However, there's someone else that can tell the story, and that's science.
Yeah.
That's science. How much pressure was the hyoid bone broken? How much pressure was put on that neck? Because there's bruises on both sides of the neck. So if TH wants to tell that story or wants to use that as a defense, well, he'll have to do it at his own peril, because science can disprove what he is saying. This is from Law and Crime on the case.
Breaking news. The case of Anna Kepner is now reportedly a homicide. The teen varsity cheerleader was reportedly choked to death aboard a Carnival cruise ship. We have also learned what Anna Kepner's stepbrother, whose family says is a suspect in her death, told family members when the 18-year-old girl was allegedly found stuffed under a bed on board the ship. Now that her family is saying this is a criminal case, we have also noticed that some family members' stories are clashing. Were Anna and her stepbrother inseparable, or was he dangerously obsessed with her? We're on the case, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. Hey guys, before we start this case, let's talk about the app Upside. Kepner allegedly died of a bar hold, according to the report, an arm across her neck. The report also says there were no signs of sexual assault or drugs in her system, but there were reportedly bruises on the side of her neck. There's also new information that we have related to the timeline of when Kepner may have died. I'm going to get into that in just a moment. Now, the FBI has not commented on the case. They are saying they're just investigating. They have been tight-lipped about everything else. They haven't arrested anybody, or at least that we know of, and publicly they haven't named anyone as a suspect. But we do know that Anna's stepmom, who was on the cruise with her, called her son, who is Anna's stepbrother, he's 16, a suspect in the death investigation.
The older child, who's approximately 16 years of age, is a suspect in the death of the stepchild, an 18-year-old daughter that was in the same room.
Now, that was a major moment in this story because it came out of a custody hearing in Florida involving Kepner's stepmom. Her name is Shauntel Hudson, and her ex-husband. Again, they've been going through custody issues for more than a year, and their custody issues are unrelated to the death investigation. But what you just heard there was the attorney for the stepmom's ex-husband saying that the 16-year-old is a, quote, suspect in Kepner's case. Now, back to the grandparents of Anna Kepner, who were on this cruise, and their interview with ABC News. They said for the first time in the interview what the 16-year-old stepson reportedly told them after Anna's body was found. Now, I'll get to that piece of information in a moment, but we're also learning more about what happened in the final days of Anna's life. So let's go to November 6th. And this was on a 6-day cruise from Miami to some spots in the Caribbean on the Carnival cruise ship Horizon. So this trip is coming to an end. It's one of the last nights before the ship was going to return to port to Miami. And Kepner, reportedly around dinner time, wasn't feeling well. Her grandparents say in their interview with ABC that she had braces. The braces were bothering her. So she was going to call it an early night. Then we get to November 7th, the next day. Kepner's family, they got together for breakfast, and Anna Kepner didn't show up. Her grandfather said that he was getting bingo cards when he heard over the loudspeaker that there was a medical emergency. And you think of the moment for him. He recognized the room number that they were talking about. It was around 11 o'clock in the morning that the Daily Mail has said that it was a maid who entered Anna's stateroom and made the horrifying discovery. Kepner's body was allegedly found wrapped in a blanket, covered over with life jackets, and stuffed under a bed. ABC News says that she had been strangled. An arm allegedly across her neck had killed her. And there was reportedly no evidence of sexual assault or drugs or alcohol in her system at the time of her death. The ship returned to port on November 8th, the day after her body was found. Her body was then taken off of the ship and transported to the medical examiner's office in Miami-Dade County. This is video per WSVN TV by reporter Sheldon Fox. In the new ABC News report, the death certificate allegedly says that Kepner died on November 6th at an unknown time. So that means authorities believe that Kepner was allegedly killed the night before her body was found, and it must have been after the time that her family said that she wasn't feeling well and needed to be excused from dinner. Kepner's grandparents said that there were a total of 9 family members on this cruise. You had Anna, her grandma, her grandpa, her biological dad, and Anna's 2 biological siblings. Then you had Shauntel Hudson, who's the stepmom, and her 2 children, a 9-year-old girl and a 16-year-old son, who is now reportedly the suspect in Anna's death. Anna's grandparents said that the family going on this trip, it was supposed to be this new tradition as this blended family had come together. And they also said that Anna had a real brother-sister-like relationship with her stepbrother, the 16-year-old. In fact, the grandparents described them as 2 peas in a pod. Now, that description, I will tell you, is very different from what a former boyfriend of Anna has been saying. Now, the dad of that ex-boyfriend told Inside Edition that the stepbrother was actually, quote, obsessed with Anna, and allegedly not in a good way. He goes on to say, quote, she was scared of him because he always carried around a big knife. He also said that his son once saw the stepbrother go into Kepner's room during a FaceTime call and, quote, when she was sleeping, and get on top of her. And he went on to say, quote, he's like infatuated, attracted to her like crazy. He always wanted to date her. All of this is per Inside Edition. Now, the ex-boyfriend also told the media outlet that Anna was so afraid of her stepbrother that she actually slept at friends' houses just to get away. On this cruise, Anna was reportedly sharing a room with that stepbrother. Now, not only that, the ex-boyfriend also says that Anna's biological brother tried to get into the stateroom, but the door was locked. Anna and the stepbrother were inside. And according to Inside Edition, he said that he could hear yelling, including the stepbrother saying something along along the lines of shut the hell up. And he also says that he could hear something banging around the room. Now, the grandparents told ABC News that investigators say the only person seen going in and out of the stateroom where Anna was found dead was that 16-year-old stepbrother. But this is where this case gets even more bizarre, because Anna's grandparents say everyone was questioned after the girl's body was found, and the stepson reportedly said he doesn't remember details about the alleged incident. According to ABC, the 16-year-old said, quote, in his own words, says he does not remember what happened. Now, that is what Anna's grandma told the media outlet that the boy told her. She also says the boy was hospitalized for a psychiatric evaluation once the ship returned to port in Miami. Now, we know that the boy is getting some form of mental health treatment.
December 1st.
So there's a hell of a lot of information given out right there. We alluded to it earlier when we talked about him interviewed by the FBI and whether they gave him Miranda, whether they did not, whether they interviewed him as a witness or as a suspect. All of those things are crucial. All of those things mean something. But so much information. But as I said earlier, I would not trust anything the grandmother said because she's been inaccurate on several things. The way an investigation is done, you don't trust one person to give you all of the information, the time, the place of occurrence, when, where, who, what, how, and why. You interview numerous people. And then the most competent, the most believable people, you'll take down everything that everyone said, and you'll memorialize it on what's known as a complaint follow-up. However, certain things you can say that what she said there wasn't believable, and you dismiss it. Not to say you don't put it on the report, you do. But as an investigator, you would dismiss it because it makes absolutely no sense. And the grandmother, some of the things she said didn't make much sense at all. And now a word from our sponsor. FanDuel's got an offer you don't want to miss this NFL season. New customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet $5, and if it wins, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. You can build parlays, bet player props, ride the live lines, whatever your style. FanDuel has you covered. The NFL season is here. The only question is, are you ready to play? You must be 21 years or older and present in select states. For Kansas, an affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in D.C., Kentucky, or Wyoming. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbookfanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut, or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 1-800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NEW YORK or text HOPE New York in New York. This is the family court case whereby they got a lot of information relative to the 16-year-old being a suspect in this case.
At 9 a.m.
Can I speak? He has a psychiatrist appointment on December 1st.
Ma'am, just a second. Hold on. I want you to be able to talk with your attorney before you speak. If she says it's okay for you to speak, I'm okay with that. But I think you need to run that by her first.
That there was another key moment from this custody hearing where Shauntel Hudson, the stepmom, speaks up in court when it comes to scheduling another hearing in relation to the custody case, where she says the boy has a psychiatrist appointment on that particular day. At the time of this recording, it is unclear if anyone has been charged in connection to Kepner's death. Now, another layer to this story that's come to light is the relationship, or lack thereof, that Anna Kepner had with her biological mom. Heather Wright is Anna's biological mom, and she does not live in the state of Florida. She says she has no relationship with Kepner's biological dad, who is the one who was on the cruise. She said that she had to learn about her daughter's death from media reports online. And she also said that Kepner's dad actually tried to ban her from Anna's memorial service. And this is where it gets just very bizarre, kind of tragic. The biological mom says she attended that memorial service in Titusville, Florida last week wearing a disguise. This is what she told Ashley Banfield on News Nation.
Well, that really has nothing to do with this case. The mother, the biological mother, really, now she's coming out of the woodwork, and I feel bad that she lost her biological daughter, but she had nothing to do with her life, basically knew nothing about her. She seemed to have her own issues, if you understand what I'm talking about. But now we have a lot more information on this case, and there's been many people on YouTube, many content creators covering this case. And what everyone, of course, is waiting for is the FBI to go in and make the arrest. That's what's left. However, the FBI is in no rush. They want to build the strongest case possible, and they could be waiting for the toxicology to come back. I don't know, and we don't know. Did they take blood from TH, the 16-year-old suspect? I would think not, because they would have needed a search warrant to take his blood, and that would require a court order. So if they didn't name him as a suspect, I can't see them, getting a warrant to take his blood. And now, how are we going to know, other than eyeball witness, whether he was in fact drinking, whether he was in fact drunk that night, and did that contribute? Although I said to Professor Geary before we came on the air, intoxication is no defense to an offense, right out of Law 101. Correct, Mike?
That's correct. Because you're presumed to intend the net consequences that come from your actions. So if you put somebody in an arm bar, or you point a firearm at somebody, you stab somebody, it doesn't matter if you're drunk. The fact is that the law presumes that you intended for the harm to happen. So he could say he had one drink, he could say he had 20. It doesn't matter under the law.
Yeah. So to say that, but that might help though in a prosecution.
Oh, sure.
That he was infatuated with her.
Mm-hmm.
He had several unwanted advances on other dates, according to several eyeball witnesses. And maybe because he was intoxicated, and I'm not saying he was, but there's some information that he may have been. So will the FBI know the answer to that? And will they dig up the evidence that they need to prove that? So that would not be good for a 16-year-old, and even worse for the parents of this 16-year-old, for the parent, the biological mother, Shauntel Hudson. So, as we go over this case, and I've been covering it all week in little 28, 30-minute episodes, it's really distressing. I mean, it was supposed to be a joyous family event on a cruise ship, and an 18-year-old girl loses her life at the hands of a stepbrother. Just absolutely, absolutely horrific. Mike, I think we did some really intuitive and good coverage of this today. I want to know your final thoughts.
Final thoughts. I just want to say that thinking about what you talked about, wrestling with a person, and then Eyes on Heaven mentioned that before. I've been thinking about it for like last 15 minutes. I think it's a great thought. If I'm his defense attorney, when he gets arrested, and he will be arrested probably when he gets out of whatever psychiatric care facility he's in, he may try to plead that it was a reckless act, and a reckless homicide is probably not going to be considered an adult crime like murder to keep him in an adult court. It may, a reckless homicide like a manslaughter may keep him in juvenile court. So I think you and I think Eyes on Heaven are on the right track. I think that's where the defense may go. This was a complete accident, and therefore it's a manslaughter. Therefore, we keep him in Florida family court. But what's going to happen is all the stuff that I like, all the legal stuff, is going to happen when he gets out of his psychiatric facility or under the doctor's care, and he gets picked up and charged. I'm looking forward to that very soon.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, very, very well spoken, Mike. At FL Treasure, I understand there's been a confession at FL Treasury. If there was a confession, he'd be under arrest already, because a confession can give you probable cause. So if he confessed to it, he would be arrested. So I don't think that's true that he made a confession. He may have made some admissions that didn't cross the Rubicon into probable cause. But if he made a confession, which is total admission of guilt, he would be in handcuffs right now, and he's not. Folks, I want to thank everyone for tuning in today, especially this is the beginning of the holidays, at least in the U.S., and I know I really want to include all of our friends across the pond, because I know you guys don't celebrate Thanksgiving, but I know you like to celebrate all kinds of holidays. You're jovial, friendly, loving, and we really appreciate all of you guys. This is the start of the holiday season in the United States, starting with Thanksgiving, and then we go into Christmas, and then, of course, New Year's Eve, and we start the new year. So thank everyone today for tuning in. On behalf of myself, Bill Cannon, and Professor Mike Geary, thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone, and God bless.
One episode just ain't enough.